Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to episode 2 of the Burd Files podcast. Today, I've got Jensen with me, and we're going to be talking about hockey and some of the stuff that's going on in the NHL as of right now, and and some of the stuff that might be a little bit different from how you would usually see it due to this pandemic. Go ahead, Jensen.
Yeah, I'm Jensen. I'm from Avon, Connecticut. Been playing hockey my whole life, so obviously this pandemic has taken a big toll on the season and everything, high school and NHL. So we'll get into that.
Yeah. All right. So I think without further ado, we should just get straight into what we're just into it.
Yeah.
So May 19th, Akim Aliu, former professional hockey player. He spent I believe at least one season in the National Hockey League with the Calgary Flames, but he spent majority of his time in professional hockey in the AHL, American Hockey League, and East Coast Hockey League, the farm programs to the NHL. And he wrote an article this past week talking about discrimination and just his experience in the hockey world, and it was definitely eye-opening to some of the worst side of hockey. And I'm sure you've read the article. I mean, what were your initial thoughts after just reading it?
Yeah, I saw the article, and in my mind, I was like, this isn't part of hockey. Like, yeah, this is happening. We don't see it. Like, it's kind of pushed to the side of things. Like, we don't see many African American players in the league. Like, I think it said there were 77 total something, but there's no place for it, obviously. I've seen it playing myself. It's just not, shouldn't be there. He explained like how he was treated, how it made him felt and stuff.
Yeah, and I think it all really started. And I think when he was really young. And I think a great point that he made was, racism doesn't just pop into your head, right? Like that stuff is built into you. So when he was playing, yeah, exactly. Like you're not born a racist, but you don't just, racism doesn't just happen in a snap. It's built up over time. And, in his article, he talked about when he got to Windsor, some of the stuff they did to him, putting Tiger Bomb in his jockstrap. I mean, that's brutal. And throwing his gear on the roof. Like, I mean, that's just abominable. Like, I don't understand why they got to do that. And
it's far from a normal like team prank that you'll do to one of your buddies.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine being on that team and thinking about that team dynamic. It just makes me shudder. And it makes me feel a little bit ashamed to be a hockey player, seeing stuff like this happen in the sport that's supposed to be my safe space. It's tough. It's tough to see stuff like that. And yeah, as you said, there's just absolutely no place for that at all in the sport. He talked a little bit about how he talked about the hockey is for everyone movement, right? And how,
right.
And one of the big points in his article was that hockey is not for everyone. So, and that's actually the title of his article. So what do you take from that?
Yeah, I saw that. And one of the points in the article was he doesn't want the hockey is for everyone label just to be a little media stunt for the NHL for a few weeks. It's something that's like we really got to look at, like just as much as hockey fights cancer, like all that stuff, like it's got to be incorporated into what we look at every day. And the movements, like, yeah, we've seen it get better over the years, and the acceptance of diverse people throughout every sport. But in hockey in general, we need to see it more. As a ref, like I ref youth hockey as well, and they're cracking down on this stuff too, with like the bantams who are starting to like understand like what this stuff is, and they're able to like chirp more and stuff, and like they're handing out match penalties like so much more often, which, I mean, you don't want to see a kid get a match penalty, but for this, like you kind of have to, like hate speech, like, you know, and then they'll have a hearing, and it's an attempt to do this so that when like a learning experience, so that when they get up to the higher levels, if they do, you know, it's not something they're going to do there. It's like eliminating it at like the start.
Yeah. I mean, especially with you know, the younger kids. I mean, you cannot be letting stuff like this slide because you know they if you allow this, you know, one time when a kid is a peewee, and then you start cracking down on him, you know, like 2-3 years later, I mean, that means nothing because he's already going to have this mindset that, you know what, I didn't get punished the first 3 years. Why does that mean I should get punished now? And you're absolutely right. It needs to be cracked down on early. And I'm happy to see that that's happening. But I'm also, it just kind of pisses me off that, you know, it's happening at all because, I mean, it's gruesome and it doesn't belong. And,
Right.
And, you know, going back to my last point, I came back to me. You know, hockey, generally, looking at hockey, it's probably one of the, you know, least diverse sports. I mean, just if you look at the professional league, especially the NHL, like you said, there's only been 77, you know, like black people in the league, and you know, a majority of what you see is white people, whether they be from Canada, America, or European. You don't see a lot of that diversity that you may see in, let's say soccer, right? And I don't want to refer to the NFL or NBA because in those leagues as well, I mean, they are more diverse when it comes to race, but it's really the same. You know, it's black guys and white guys in the NFL and NBA. You don't see a lot of diversity there, but when it comes to the NHL and hockey, I think it's probably one of the least diverse sports, and that's definitely a motivator for this kind of racism in the sport. So another thing with Akim Aliu that came up actually not so recently, it actually came up a while ago. Bill Peters, the coach of the Calgary Flames, was let go because of claims that Akim Aliu brought forth.
Right.
That he had said some pretty disgusting things. You know, saying the N-word to him because of the choice of his music, and you know, just to see, you know, what comes to your mind when you hear that kind of crap?
You know, it's not something where I want to be there when it happens. You know, I have been there on the ice when it's happened, and it's just embarrassing because not just for someone on my own team to say it, but like to be in that position, like I'm a hockey player, like I'm white, I'm playing hockey, and there are other white kids on my team saying these slurs, and I just don't want to have that reputation on me for being a hockey player.
Yeah. And I think especially in a sport like hockey, you know, there's stuff referred to as, you know, quote unquote locker room talk, but you know, I think there's definitely things that can be said in the locker room that shouldn't be said outside the locker room. But I think there is a strict line when it comes to racist and hate speech and hateful comments. I mean, you like. I don't care, you know, what space you're in. I mean, there's no reason that, you know, saying, you know, racial slurs should be a part of your regular vocabulary, whether there are people, you know, that could be offensive to near you or not.
Yeah, regardless if they're there or not. Yeah. You just shouldn't have that in your vocabulary.
I think it's kind of, I don't want to say amazing, but I mean, it does amaze me the fact that Steve Downey, the guy who caused a lot of this trauma to Akim Aliu when he was in Windsor, went on to play over 400 NHL games. I mean, you would think that this kind of behavior would cause some sort of consequence, but I think the leniency that went towards his situation just kind of shows, you know, how hockey kind of has grown from it, but also where hockey was at just a short time ago.
Right.
I mean, this was just 2006. I mean, 14 years ago, you got guys being just blatantly racist and it has gotten better to a certain extent, but it's scary. It's scary to think about just how recent this was, and yeah, I hate to see this kind of stuff, especially in some play in the sport that I consider my safe haven. All right, so Jensen, I just kind of want to like dive into the playoffs, the NHL playoffs, and the revisions that they made and they agreed upon to have a 24 team playoff, which is
Right.
Very very different from the norm. Obviously it's normally a 16 team playoff. One plays 8, two plays 7, but because of this global pandemic, we're seeing an extremely strange playoff format. With 24 teams. How do you feel? How do you feel about that?
With the playoffs coming up, as they should be right now, if there weren't the pandemic, we would see the normal playoffs. But with this 24 team proposal that they've made, there's some flaws in it, definitely. There's a play-in round that it looks like, and not every team has voted for it, that they want it.
Yeah, I saw that. The Tampa Bay Lightning and the Carolina Hurricanes, when they had the representatives from each team vote on whether or not this was whether or not this should be moved forward as the proposed plan. Tampa Bay and Carolina actually voted no. So what are some reasons why you could imagine that? Well, what are some reasons why you think they would have voted no?
I'm thinking for Carolina, at least in the first round, it looks like they would play. Give me a sec, I have it right here. All right, so in the first round, yeah, they would play the Rangers. That's a tough matchup. I could see that going 5 games. I don't think an NHL team would say no to any sort of game because those guys are so competitive. The state of North Carolina is reopening, so they're not as quarantined as, say, more up north, like in New York. So I'm not really sure why they would say no. Same thing with Tampa. Who does Tampa play in the first round? Tampa has
a bye.
Oh, they have the bye to the second round, and they would play the winner of Carolina and New York. So if the season were still going and they moved right into this, I don't know why Tampa would say no, because I feel like Tampa could easily take either New York or Carolina.
Yeah, and I think specifically for Carolina's point is that they finished off better in the standings at this point with the 69-71 games played. But the thing is that the New York Rangers actually went 4-0 in the season series against Carolina. Regardless of their seeding, the Rangers seem to have been able to best Carolina throughout this season. If you had put them in 7 games, it would have been a sweep. I mean, New York won 4 out of 4 games, and I think it's probably scary a little bit for Carolina, and it's also just like the teams that are supposed to be there, I feel a little bit cheated because there's teams it's supposed to be the top 8 teams from each conference, right? But now it's the top 12. So I think they may feel a little bit cheated because 4 extra teams are just kind of hopping in, and those teams that should have made it, who have to play a team that's not in the top top 8, probably feel a little bit cheated.
Right.
But in Tampa's case, I really just don't understand that, because it's just a regular playoff series for them.
Right. I'm looking at. I was thinking maybe the cases in Florida are going up, but it seems as if they've peaked already and they're on their way down on the curve. Maybe they're going back up. I can't really tell, but I feel like if everybody's considering this, that wouldn't be the biggest factor if they're putting all the right precautions in place to keep these players and their families and everyone involved safe. I was going to take a look at Carolina as well.
Yeah, well, I think Florida has been one of the states that has kind of just I mean, they've stayed pretty much open throughout the whole thing. You know,
Right,
even
yeah.
with even at the peak. I mean, I mean the UFC events. You know, they had 2 UFC events there. You know,
Right.
within the past couple weeks, and I mean, yeah, I mean, Florida is basically I think probably the only state that's opened up right now to professional sports. I'm not sure if there's any other states, but they've been open to it, and I think that's where like the NBA is looking to conduct the rest of their season and playoffs. But yeah, I mean, I can only think the reason for them not wanting to do it is for safety. Because if I go and look at the NHL standings, I mean, Tampa Bay is the 2 seed in the East, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, they are.
Yeah.
They're
So
the 2 seed in the East and 3 in the whole league.
yeah. So if I go to the NHL, like NHL.com, and I look at the bracket that would happen now, they would be playing the Maple Leafs. That should be their matchup if it was a regular 16-game playoff.
Right.
And for me, at least, when I look at that matchup, I would much rather play Carolina or the Rangers than the Maple Leafs, just because of the weapons on that team.
Right.
So I'm not like too sure. You know, unless it's a safety thing, I'm not, 100% sure why there's any pushback at all, especially for a team with a bye. I mean, how's Carolina looking with the curve?
Yeah, I just looked at the curve. They have not hit their peak yet.
No.
It looks like in North Carolina, they're like just getting there. It looks like. So, that may be their top priority is safety, like regardless. I don't blame them. Like,
oh yeah,
I want this virus
for sure.
if I were one of them.
I don't think. I mean, yeah, safety is the number one priority for me, and I'm sure for a lot of these guys.
Right.
And if they don't feel like it's safe to go out and play, then that's understandable. I think there's also a certain level of like they also feel cheated. I mean, Jordan Martinook, came out with this statement saying that the NHL playoff is supposed to be a 4-round, 16-team, 7-game series playoff. And that's just how it's supposed to go. And this 2014 thing is just kind of, messing up the tradition. And so I can also understand where he's coming from, because as the let me look, where are they? As the 6th seed, they have to play the 11th seed. So actually, I'm not sure if I completely understand where they're coming from either, because if I look at this, Carolina would have to play the Capitals in round 1 if it was a regular series. So yeah, I think definitely safety has to be the only factor, because I sure as hell would not want to play the Capitals in round 1 if I'm Carolina.
Right, and I think Jordan Martinook followed up on that statement after he confirmed that it's right here. After that, he confirmed that Carolina did vote against. His quote, "I feel like if you're doing the 24-team thing, it basically gives a team a chance that had no chance of making it, which if you play 82 games, there's maybe a 6 to 8% chance that the team in the 12th place in the conference makes it to the playoffs." He says, "Nobody's ever seen this before, but at the end of the day, Stanley Cup playoffs are 16 teams in a 7-game series." So yeah. I would feel I would assume he's speaking for the whole team in that point.
Yeah.
And that's where they stand. So
yeah, I can understand exactly where he's coming from, and I would feel cheated as well. I mean, I think there's a certain level of just tradition that goes along with this 16-game, series and how it's just always been. And
right.
and it's also like, you fight your ass off for 82 games. In this case, it's 71, which is, close enough. A 12th place team, the chances that they climb up to 8 in the last 8-10 games this season is pretty low. But you fight, you work hard, you win games, you get to where you're supposed to be at to make the playoffs, and then you did it fairly. I mean, you followed the rules, and you got on that. You were in the right spot to be there if it was supposed to be normal. And then this team that without this situation that would never be there this year gets that opportunity as well. I mean, they basically the NHL is basically saying like a big screw you to all the teams that made it fairly. And they're opening opportunities. Like I think we talked about Chicago versus Edmonton, right? Like
Right.
If I'm looking at that, that's a 5 seed versus a 12 seed.
Right.
And I don't want to play Chicago in a 5-game series. I mean, Chicago's good. They just didn't happen to be win a lot of games this year, but they could definitely pull something out. And I can understand, like, I mean, I don't know how I feel about it. I mean, how would you feel being a 5 seed playing a 12 seed?
I mean, it happened this year in the start of our playoffs for my high school team. Like not in the whole situation, but like we were cruising through playoffs, and then we're playing like all these strong teams that are ranked so low, and it's like, what is this? That was just because Connecticut high school hockey is very, like, I wouldn't say bad, but it's not done correctly the way they get their standings.
Yeah, no, like the players aren't bad, but the commission is kind of
Yeah,
wacky.
it's terrible the way they hand out points. Anyway, back to the playoffs. I just found a statement from Alex Killorn that came out yesterday from the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he's explaining why Tampa voted against the 24 playoff proposal. And it's pretty much the same thing as what Carolina where Carolina stands. He said they didn't feel it was fair that certain teams that probably wouldn't have made the playoffs have a chance to make the playoffs in a best of 5 series. My team also felt it was unfair that the teams with a bye would not be as well prepared for a playoff series as the teams that had already basically played a playoff series to get into the playoffs. So now I didn't think about that yet. So like all the teams that get a bye, they're coming in cold against the winners of the play-in rounds.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that either. I mean,
that's a very good point as well.
That's that's a significant advantage because
hockey, I can definitely see where he's coming from too there.
Yeah. Hockey's a huge momentum game, right?
Right.
Like you win a couple and you can get on a roll.
Exactly.
So, I mean, yeah, I had not thought about that at all. I mean, realistically,
that makes so much more sense.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if Carolina comes out and wins, like, they win 3 in a row, that could be really scary because, like, even the Rangers too. You get guys like Panarin, Zibanejad. You get guys like that just fired up, and you could see what they've done. I mean, Zibanejad had 40 goals. Panarin had close. Panarin had like what 40. I don't know how many.
Stats.
He's up there.
Yeah. No, Panarin had where is it? Panarin had 32 goals this year and 63 assists. He would have pushed 100 points.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I would not want to play, as a team like Tampa, who's, I mean, kind of notorious for choking in the playoffs.
Right.
I don't want to play a team that's coming off 3 wins. Hell no.
Right. Same thing for me. Like, as a Bruins fan, I don't want to see, either Toronto or Columbus coming in hot after that series, because that's going to be a hard-fought series.
Yeah.
If we see Columbus and Toronto, and I don't think we'll be ready in Boston for that.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, really for any of these teams, if I'm looking at it, like,
right.
it would be like the Avalanche would have to play against the Canucks or the Wild. I think any of these teams who are getting a bye. I mean, hockey, like I said before, hockey's just like so momentum based. I mean, you get a team that maybe shouldn't be in the playoffs playing well. Like let's say the Habs, right? You get Price playing his A game. You got all of
Right.
that, supporting cast, Weber, Domi. You got those guys, Tatar, playing good
Suzuki,
hockey.
yeah, all those guys.
Yeah, I mean, with that good, like with your goaltender completely healthy, arguably the top goaltender in the NHL, you could. I mean, I
That's a
could see them.
game-winning team.
I could see them, building up some momentum, winning against Pittsburgh, maybe 4 or 5 games, and then, going on to. I mean, who would they play?
They would go in and play Philadelphia.
Yeah, exactly. Like Philly, like they're a solid team, but like, you got a Habs team that just comes
if they're
off
cold with a hot team coming at them, that doesn't mix well.
Exactly. Like just look at last year at the Columbus Blue Jackets versus Tampa. I mean, Tampa's best team in the league, and then you get that first win, game 1, pretty big win, and then they just build and build and build off that, right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely scary.
Yeah. Yep, for sure.
And then to go back to my a point that I made a little while ago, just like strength of schedule. So I'm looking at these teams. I'd say I don't know which division is like the best division in the NHL, but I know that the Central Division is solid. Like they have a lot of like contenders. I mean, even in the playoffs, I'm looking right now, and they got 1, 2, 3. I mean, 3, 4, and Vegas is in the Pacific, and then I mean five of the East team, 5 of the Western Conference teams that would have been in the regular playoff format came from the Central Division, right? So that's like the Central Division is a strong division, and then you look at a team like Chicago, who if you look at their end of year schedule, I mean they're playing. The games that got postponed, they got Ottawa, Washington, Minnesota 2 times, Buffalo, Nashville. And they have some pretty like tough games at the end of the stretch. So like to think that if you just played 3, 4 more games, Chicago might not even be the 12 seed. That that's even more frustrating for Edmonton, because it's like, if you play out the season, these guys don't even deserve to be in the 2014 playoff. But, we have to end up facing these guys. And, I don't think anybody wants to face Patrick Kane, Jonathan Toews, Corey Crawford, Duncan Keith in the first round of the playoffs. I don't think anybody does.
I think they're starting – is Cam Ward over in Chicago? Anyway, still 2 good goalies.
Yeah. I mean, regardless, I mean, that team is – they're on the downfall from their, great dynasty. But, like, still, they're a scary team to play, and I would certainly not want to play against them in the first round of the playoffs. Especially if they shouldn't be there in the first place.
Exactly.
So it's definitely frustrating. I mean, overall, like you said before, I mean, these hockey players, they want to play hockey. So I mean, they're gonna play this season. It's not like the Carolina Hurricanes are gonna go on strike because they made the playoffs, right?
Right.
But I can see how it's frustrating. I mean, Shea Weber made that comment. They asked him, "Do you think it's fair?" He was like, "Oh, hell no! Like, it's not fair that we're in the playoffs, but we're gonna try and do everything we can to get the Stanley Cup." Which is nice to see players acknowledging that. But if you're on a team that is making the playoffs and you're not a top 8 seed, what are you thinking? I don't know what I'd be thinking. I'd be like, shit. I have no idea. I
mean, I'd be thankful for the opportunity to be playing for a title. But I would definitely accept the fact that it's not fair, but I would work with what I have and make the most out of it, really. Like, at the end of the day, hockey's hockey. It's like nothing else. So
I mean, this kind of brings me back to that point, talking about the asterisk that Shaq was talking about in the NBA.
right.
I was conflicted at first on whether or not there would be an asterisk, especially next to the Stanley Cup playoff champion. But as I think about it a little bit more, I think there is. I don't. What are your thoughts on the asterisk?
I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of torn on that. Um, yeah, it's not the same playoffs, but they're still playing against the same teams. They're still starting cold at some point. I would still have to see how teams would respond after that first round. Those teams that have the bye, but they're still cold into that matchup.
Yeah.
If those teams can respond well and put up a good fight against the teams coming in off the playing round, I wouldn't say that there would be an asterisk. All these teams still technically had a chance to make the playoffs. Yeah, they wouldn't necessarily, seeing who they're playing next. They have a small chance to make the playoffs if the season continued. But that chance is still very much there for them. So I don't know. I really don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that just the thing is, it's a totally different version of hockey than we're used to, right? Like,
Right.
fighting. There's a good chance you get fighting taken out for at least this
Right.
period of time. I've heard that scrums could be taken out, just like 5-4 guys in the corner fighting for a puck.
Right.
And I think that changes the game for sure. I mean, fighting's a huge.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, fighting is a part of the identity of hockey. You talk to someone who doesn't watch hockey, and they're like, "Oh yeah, that's the sport where you can fight, right?" And I mean, it's a huge part of hockey, and I don't know if
it's a momentum changer, but there's good and bad to it,
Yeah, I mean, like, there's guys that are on the National Hockey League teams who are grinders who can go out and get you like 5-6 goals a season, but
Yeah.
their job is when you're down 6 goals in the second period to beat up the biggest guy on the other team to get the boys going, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that happens in the playoffs. Like, that's a huge motivator. You don't have that. Like, I don't know if that's, it takes away a lot from the game. And that's why, there could be potentially an asterisk, just because it's going to be such a different, like, version of hockey.
Mm-hmm. Do you think you'll see guys playing with fish bowls, just not the visor? Do you think you'll see them playing with the fish bowls? I feel like that could be a possibility. The style's not crucial there, but
yeah.
it is safe.
Yeah, well, I just can't see like NHL players doing that unless it's made mandatory. Like,
I feel like they might though. I was talking about that with my buddy today, and I was like, that could very well happen.
No, yeah, I think if the NHL mandates it,
right.
But like those guys, if you think about safety, the safest thing you can possibly wear in hockey is a cage. I mean, right? You take a puck to the face, you're not gonna lose an eye. Take a stick to the face, you're not gonna lose, teeth when you're wearing a cage. These professional, NHL players, some of them are coming straight out of college, right? Like Jack Eichel, Jimmy Vesey. These guys have worn cages their whole careers, and as soon as they get to the NHL, they go to the visor. And I think it's definitely style, right? It's like,
on Jack Hughes' 18th birthday last year, like that, like they immediately switched him to the visor, and he went and played his next game with it. He had to practice in between to get used to it, but.
Yeah, I mean, it's
all about the style for them.
Yeah, and so, they're not thinking about safety, right? Like,
right.
Those guys who are fucking, like, they got their visor, like, up here. I mean, have you seen Nicholas?
The tilt on it's insane.
Like Cronwall, man. Like, Cronwall's just up here. I mean, he takes a puck to the face, something bad is going to happen. So, I mean, already these guys entering, going into the league, they have no thought of safety. But, like, I think this could be different, but I just don't see, unless the NHL says, time for a bubble, like, I don't know,
Yeah.
man. I don't know. I think it'd be really interesting to see like Ovi,
With a bubble, yeah.
with a bubble. I mean, that would be funny.
We see guys with the bubble on after if they do get hit in the face with the visor and they've got their stitches or their super glue on their face. Yeah, they're wearing the bubble for the next 3 games.
Yeah, like
That's like once in a season per team,
yeah, like Chara had one on, right?
Yeah, he had
his,
one he broke his jaw, so he had a half bubble.
Yeah.
Like there was nothing over because he doesn't wear a visor.
Yeah. He's nuts.
Yeah. I don't see a puck going up 7 feet in the air unless you really get
trash
a hold of that
hockey.
thing. Yeah.
No, I just like, I mean, with the NHL players especially, like they're just so worried about how they like those guys, like there's some players who like skate around in warm-ups, no Bucky, and they're just they're like, oh, check out this flow. Like I could think of a specific I'm trying to think of which player, but I know there was a guy who he goes out no Bucky and he's just like messing around. It was Ryan Kessler. Takes a puck off the dome in warm-ups, and he's got no Bucky on. He's trying to show off his flow, and I'm just like, come on, man! Like, this is so avoidable. It's ridiculous. But yeah, I mean, personally,
I see the same thing in the locker room before high school games. Kids are brushing their hair out before the national anthem, so they'll put their helmet on just over their head. Only one buckle so that they can take it off. Student sections to the left of them. They're looking good during the national. It's ridiculous, dude.
Yeah, they go ahead and
and I can say I've done it too.
Take a shower before, condition the hair before you get on the ice, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, man. I mean, I have nothing to work with here, so
it's not a bad thing.
If you were committed enough and athletic enough, anybody can be good at hockey. The problem is you need to have money, and that's
you go.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Another thing is you got to start when you're young. Like you can't just pick it up. Sports like soccer, like you can pick that up. You can catch up with those kids. I had friends, like we were short on players for my freshman lacrosse team last year. And we talked to a couple basketball and soccer players. They hopped in. They were playing varsity by the end of the season, But that would never happen in hockey because you just can't go and pick it up,
Yeah. Hockey's like the sport with the most moving parts. I mean, like,
right.
You can't. There's so many different parts to hockey. Like I'm not shitting on any other sport. Basketball, you have to. Number one, you have to be athletic to play basketball. You have to, you have to be able to shoot and pass. I mean, I think shooting and dribbling is, the most important parts.
Positioning, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's why, basketball is so much like wider played around the world just because of the accessibility. I mean, you need a basketball to play basketball. That's literally all you need. You can make your own hoop. You can do whatever, but all you need is a ball. Right, and you can.
Most towns have public hoops too. Like
exactly.
Like, there's only one rink in my town. Yeah, there are many rinks around in surrounding towns, but I could name about five places where there are multiple soccer fields in one, facility.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like soccer too, right? Like soccer, you need to be able, again, athleticism is just meant, like, it's needed, it's necessary in all sports, but soccer, you need to be able to be fast. You need to, there is definitely an art to shooting a soccer ball that not everybody can master, but it's something that if you work at, you can get down. And football, right? Catching and throwing is a really important part. Being able to read routes. Baseball, hitting the baseball, running the bases, catching a baseball, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the difference that hockey has is hockey is basically two sports in one, right? I mean, skating is the, probably the most difficult part of hockey,
right?
And if you cannot do that, you can't play hockey. There's so many different moving parts, like I said, like skating, stick handling, shooting, passing. Like passing in in hockey is different than like passing in basketball. Basketball, you throw it to the other guy and he catches it. It's done. Hockey, you can't just catch the puck, right? Like
You got to know where you are. You got to know where the other team is, because if you've got your head behind you, you're getting
blown
a lollipop
out.
pass. Yeah, you're getting blown up.
I think something that's misconstrued a lot is like you can't like if this is my stick, this is your stick. You pass me the puck. I can't just go like this, right? There has to be, you
cradle
have to
to it, yeah.
cradle, yeah. And I think there's so much different stuff that you have to be able to master before you can like reliably go on the ice and play competitive hockey.
Right.
That it takes the most skill to me, and I'm definitely biased because I'm a hockey player myself, but I think just comparing it to everything else, it's definitely probably the most difficult. Which
it's one of the fastest sport on feet, I would say, besides like that inline speed skating, which is insane. Have you seen those skates? If we played hockey on those skates, that would be ridiculous.
Are you talking about those like super long, just like squares, the rectangles?
Yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Oof.
But yeah, besides that, I would say hockey's the fastest moving game on feet. I'm looking at McDavid's top speed. His top speed was 25.4 miles per hour.
Okay. And I see here Hull. I don't know which Hull, but some Hull was timed at 29.2 miles per hour, the fastest in the National Hockey League. So Bobby Hull.
That's the speed limit on my street. Like, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, like these guys are skating, ridiculous amount, and skating is not at all like running, right? Like in the NFL, sometimes you'll see those guys get up to really fast speeds. You'll see like Kareem Hunt, guys like that, get up to like 26 miles an hour, stuff like that. But skating is it's just a totally different mechanics, right?
And the weight you're carrying with you from all the gear, like it's so light nowadays, but it's still like a few extra pounds that you're carrying with you.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean,
and especially if you're worrying about a puck on your stick too, like.
Like I don't understand how Connor McDavid does what he does at such a top speed. I mean, he effortlessly just leaves guys. I want to now talk about the 2020 super hyped up projected first overall pick, Alexis Lafreniere. I mean, this kid. If I look up his stat line, I'm pretty sure this kid's like a 2 points per game player in the queue.
Yeah, I've got him right here. 52 games played this year, 35 goals, 77 assists. So, all right, 112 points in 52 games so far this year. So, let me do the math on that.
Yeah, that's stupid. That's just stupid.
Yeah, that's over 2 points per game.
Yeah,
which is unreal.
So I want to ask, just like comparing this guy, Lafreniere to Hughes, what do you think the better league is, in terms of like judging a player? So like, we saw Hughes played also 50 something games and had 112, I think it was 112 points as well. And, he's playing in the US NDP program, which is, they're playing colleges and USHL teams. But, you see Lafreniere is playing in the QMJHL. He's playing 50 games, and he also has 112 points. Where do you think, which league do you think is better, and which 112 points do you think is worth more?
I would definitely say the QMJHL.
Okay.
A lot more, how do I say this? I wouldn't say better players, but a lot more like NHL studs have come out of there. I feel like a lot of good guys come out of the development program too. Comparing him to Hughes, though, he's a bigger kid. He's 6'1", 192 pounds, which I definitely think that's bigger than Hughes.
Oh yeah,
he was going
yeah, by far.
He's a winger, but I don't see him playing wing in the NHL.
No?
I see them moving him over to center because he's like he started off when he came to the QMJHL, he started off as like a sniper. not
Yeah, I
as
see
much
that.
as a playmaker.
42 goals in his first year in the queue.
Right. And then he's drifted more over to a playmaker. Um, and you don't really see wingers like controlling that whole atmosphere on the ice, like moving the puck around and getting things set up. You see that as more of like a center role. So I see wherever he gets drafted, I feel like it wouldn't be a dumb move to put him at center. I definitely think he could benefit in that position. Um, Moving back to the comparison to him and Hughes, I definitely think he's a better player.
Yeah. And I was looking at Detroit and I was reading some stuff about Steve Yzerman, who's the new, he's taken over his GM role in Detroit. Steve Yzerman, he has this keen ability to see, players who are not super touted and see their potential. And he did that with like Moritz Seider, took him 7th
Right.
overall. And he was not on the board, in the top 15 for many of the scouts. That kid, is tearing it up in the DEL and is probably going to be NHL ready next year.
Oh
And
yeah,
and
definitely.
that kind of brings me to the thought, Tim Stutzel, another German kid who is, ranked within the top 5, I think, for this year's draft. And you have to think, I mean, this kid's playing, in the top pro league in Germany, and he's got 34 points in 41 games. You have to think, will Yzerman go off the board if he gets first overall? I think it's a slight chance, but I mean, it's a possibility. What are your thoughts on that?
Um, no, I definitely see um this kid going wherever first place or first pick overall. Um, Another good kid is Quentin Byfield.
Mm-hmm.
Um, he's a big dude, but his agility is unreal. I wouldn't say he's anywhere near competition for Lafreniere, uh, but this kid is also unreal. So regardless of who gets the first pick, the 5 first picks for this draft they're just unreal.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. I mean, Lafreniere, Byfield, Stutzel, Perfetti, Raymond, Rossi, Marco Rossi or Rossi. I mean, I don't know if you know who Marco Rossi is. I mean, do you know who I'm talking about when I say his
No,
name?
mm-mm.
Okay. Well, he's draft eligible, played for the Ottawa 67s in the OHL. He's ranked here as number 8. This is by hockeyprospects.com, top
Mm-hmm.
31. But I
Okay.
was reading some stuff about advanced stats. I mean, this kid played 56 games in the OHL. He had 39 goals and 81 assists for 120 points,
Mm-hmm.
which is, insane. I mean, he blew it up, and I could see, looking at some advanced stats just on some Instagram pages that I follow.
Mm-hmm.
That kid could end up going, top 4. He could sneak up, and I think this is going to be a pretty stacked draft year, at least in the upper half of the draft, for sure.
Definitely.
Yeah. All right,
Um,
man.
I'm not sure if you mentioned this guy too, Alexander Holtz, um, from Sweden. I saw a video on him today. Uh, he could be up there with Lucas Raymond, um, in that top 5 as well.
Yeah. Yeah, it's when you see these kids who are like 17, 18 years old playing in that top Swedish league, um, again, that I say Swedish league is probably within the top 3 top best, leagues. I think, NHL, and then I think KHL and SHL are kind of interchangeable for 2.
Right.
And I think you see those guys going in there. I mean, their point totals don't look super appetizing, but for sure, I'm seeing what you're talking about with Holtz. And I'm reading the report on him, and I've definitely, his name has been in the conversation a lot, and I think you're absolutely right. He could definitely jump up and be a significant impact. Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean this whole draft class, top 10. Let me just kind of dwindle that down to top 10 is extremely good. I think any team with a pick in the top 10 is going to get a winner, unless they go insanely off the board, and then again they might also get a winner. I mean, you've seen what Steve Eisman is able to do, and yeah.
Yep.
So I got one final question for you. This one might take you a minute, but who are your top 10 players in the National Hockey League as of right now?
As of right now, I wrote them out. Some of them you might think, why are they on that list? Some of them are obvious. At one, I still have McDavid.
Okay.
Number two, Pasternak. This isn't a Bruins bias or anything.
Huh.
But he's got 48 goals and 47 assists.
Okay.
In 70 games, I think.
Okay.
I think he scored almost, or put a point up almost every game. Yeah, definitely every game. His line mates Marchand and Bergeron, that whole team, they've been together for 2-3 years.
Mm-hmm.
They know each other. They know where each other are on the ice. And that's why they're doing so well. And they're still not, like, they're still pretty young.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think Bergeron and Marchand, they're getting into the latter half of their careers, but there's definitely a young core there in Boston that's going to just, they're going to continue to be good. I don't see them going into rebuild. But so you got McDavid, Pasternak at 2. So now I'm interested to hear who's at 3, because I was definitely not expecting 2 to be Pasta.
I couldn't decide for 3 to either choose Panarin or Draisaitl.
Okay.
Draisaitl has 43 goals and 67 assists. Panarin 32 goals and 63 assists. Panarin moving to a new team, to New York, and doing that well. Like, he's already an amazing player as it is, but to do that well in a new team, new city, new players, everything about that is just different for him. And to get right in and get to work like that is unreal. Draisaitl, the work he's doing with McDavid is, again, crazy. Like, I think he's got 67 assists, so more than half of those have to be McDavid's goals.
I'm interested to see, why don't you have Crosby in your top, top 3? What's the push away factor for Crosby?
He was injured this year. I think he only played 41 games, 16 goals, and he's at my my number 5 on my list.
Okay.
Taking into effect the injury, like, we didn't see much of him this year. Still 41 games, that's good. 47 points in those games, so 16 goals and 31 assists. He's still providing for that Pittsburgh team. I just don't think we got as much out of him as we would have seen if he were healthy.
Okay.
So that's why he's a little lower on my list.
So let's hit 6.
6. So at number 6, geez, I couldn't put them all in order, but I've got, what do I have? I've got McKinnon, and who else was there? McKinnon and Kucherov are there.
Okay.
Kucherov's been consistent in Tampa Bay for the past 3-4-ish years, I think. He's still putting up points for them on that first line. Same thing with McKinnon in Colorado. They're both playing amazing. So for 7, I have Kucherov. And then 8, I have I couldn't decide between Matthews and Marchand. Marchand's been putting up a lot of assists because he's got Pasternak scoring on that line with him.
Yeah.
Matthews is still providing for Toronto.
Oh yeah.
That's I feel like he could be a little higher on my list. I don't know why I put him as low as I did, but I feel like he could definitely be higher on the list.
Okay.
Because I think he leads the league in goals. No, he's behind Pasternak.
Matthews is at 47. Pasta's at 48, and Ovechkin's also at 48.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's your top 11, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've got I wanted to throw a defender in here.
Okay.
Because why not? So I threw in John Carlson.
Yeah.
He's got 15 goals and 60 assists this season.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is ridiculous for a defenseman. Enough said for that. This is the 60 assists.
He
explains it all.
I think universally everybody's list is pretty much the same, unless you're just talking to a really, biased Maple Leafs fan who's got Marner, Tavares, and Matthews in the top 10. But yeah, I think overall, I think that's just something that you're going to see in majority of hockey fans, and yeah, I think you could definitely see that between us. I appreciate you coming on and
thank you.
and giving some insight, as well as just giving me something to talk about for an hour and a half of this boring ass quarantine, man.
Yeah, definitely. No, yeah, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. Probably watching Netflix or playing shelf.
I mean, I've watched everything on Netflix already, man. It's 8:30 over here. I'd be knocked out. I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, 9:35 right here, right now. So yeah.
Yeah. No, but I really appreciate you coming on. If you want to plug anything, just let the people know. The 6 people who watch this.
Yeah, I just hit my Instagram _Wardsy_. Yeah.
All right, we'll put that up on the screen for you. All right, cool, man.
All right. Thanks for having me, though.
No, yeah, definitely. I appreciate you coming on, and maybe when the hockey season starts back up, I can get you back on here and we can talk a little bit more. All right, man. See you, man. Have a good one.